Captain America, Civil War. Seriously? What an overlong mess this was. I don't think I've ever looked at my watch so many times during a film. Note that in this review, there may be what some people might call spoilers. I won't give away anything, any major plot points, obviously, but it's difficult to sort of go into my likes and dislikes without going into any form of detail. Um, Now, even though Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan, started off back in the same time period as Steve Rogers, bloody Chris Evans again, this film starts in 1991, and the former is being programmed like a sort of sleeper agent to commit something bad. The full ramifications of which will be, felt later on. But it all kind of feels more rather a lame Avengers movie than something Captain America specific, even though he's the dominant character. I've got a bit of a cold, by the way, so anyway. And that's part of the problem because with the Marvel series having story arcs to go throughout the films, you have to watch all of them just to keep up with everything that's going on. And they're starting just to feel like the same film being told over and over again. I love the first Avengers film, for example, but after seeing Avengers Age of Ultron, and now this one, it feels like they're just rehashing the same film again and again and again without adding anything. And the more they make the same film, the less they have to say. I mean, early on, in mid-fight, and do they do anything else? In the made-up place of Zakova, the Avengers cause an inadvertent explosion, which destroys a public building along with all the poor unfortunates inside. So, just like Man of Steel did, leading into Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Bloody Justice. This leads to the government finally getting their antics under control, or trying to, which forms a Zakova Accords agreement, and the Avengers either have to sign it and act only under government approval, and you know how long government take to try and get things sorted out when they're trying to pass motions, not that kind of motion. Yes, especially when the trouble with the Avengers, when bad guys come along, you really need something sorting out that day. You don't want to wait weeks and weeks because the whole town will be destroyed if they don't destroy it themselves. If they don't sign it, then they can't do diddly. We're told surprisingly that 117 countries have signed up to it. Given that nearly 200 countries signed up to the money-making hogwash claim about man-made global warming last December back in Paris, and if that wasn't hogwash, why would they then? Would they and their tens of thousands of delegates and press all fly there? Anyway, you think more countries would have put their names down, given what a bloody mess that the Avengers make everywhere they go. So, in this film, with some of them going for it and others abstaining on point of principle, there's a bombing in Vienna, where Bucky is a suspect, but we all know that it's not him. This is a basic misunderstanding, which is eventually sorted out later on. Again, it's a bit like bloody Batman versus Superman was mostly a misunderstanding. So it's along the way they have like a rather seemingly pointless scrap at Leipzig Airport in Germany, which just ends up with buses and planes going south. And given that most of the team have agreed to rein in their power at the request of the Secretary of State, played by William Hurt, then why would they just go ahead and smash the place up anyway? It's just going against everything. So, anyway, while going rogue, the captain has to get across to the Avengers, to those not on his side, about what happened, which involves the captain and Falcon wearing sunglasses or dark sunglasses and baseball caps in an attempt to go unseen, which is just ridiculous. Plus, there's lots of talking. The film's 2.5 hours long, so they've got to fill the time with something. Paul Bettany returns as Vision, but now sort of looking like some sort of 6-foot beetroot. In this film, we get Peggy's granddaughter, Sharon, played by Emily Van Camp. Chris Evans has impossible muscles. There's a bit more to the whole Winter Soldier story, and that was pretty good. It also introduces Spider-Man, so there's no need for another bloody whole reboot film when he gets his outing next year, because that would make like 3 in like about 15, 16 years. He also does the same for Black Panther too, a character who I wasn't particularly familiar with before. There's also a very amusing scene with a very young Robert Downey Jr. But overall, Captain America Civil War is just very, 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 very predictable. It's just crash bang wallop without any kind of a story. Other than Bucky being treated like a member of the A-Team, being convicted for a crime that he's not committed. And anything he has done can be attributed to what Hydra put him through. So he's just a pawn in their game. Although, it's like if you were to run someone over in your car, you wouldn't necessarily get convicted for murder, but you still get convicted for manslaughter. So, you know, he's not totally to blame. But I mean, in a film that's far too long, the supposed action all feels like they're just simply going through the motions. It also rarely works when you have two directors to a film, because they've got brothers Anthony and Joe Russo, who did the last film. Yeah, so they did the last film, which was Winter Soldier, which I gave that 5 out of 10. Better than the first film in the franchise, First Avenger, which I gave just 3. I didn't see either of those until last year, just before watching the second Avengers film, because I had a bit of a catch up with some of the Marvel films. But of all the characters involved, I like Bucky Barnes and Scarlet Witch. They're good, but most of them, the actors just seem to be turning up to collect the check and just doing nothing else. In addition, there's no Thor or Hulk. It's just topped by a trio of charisma vacuums in Chris Evans, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, and Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I'll mention in my review what the whole issue is with Tom Holland, but you'll see that. I'll put a link to it at the bottom. One good thing about having a Spider-Man in is that we now have Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. I mean, I love Sally Field anyway, but Marissa Tomei, yeah, that'll do. I'll also put something in a review about my issues with 2D and IMAX, because it's a bit too, in depth to go into here. Finally, I mean, what I will say is that, of course, make sure you stay for the end credit segments, because there's always something to watch, especially with a Marvel film. With this one, there's 2. Again, I'll mention it in my review, but I won't sort of spoil it here, because if you don't know what's in them, it's worth just waiting to find out. But all I'll say is you get one mid credits and one at the very, very end, to stay right until the very end. I mean, there's the main part of the credits started, and I saw people walking out, and then even while that mid-credit scene played out, people were still walking out. I mean, it's technically a part of the plot, what happens. I mean, again, I won't go into spoilers for that, but when something, you can see something still on the screen, so why don't they just stop and watch it? And with a Marvel film, how can there be people who don't know that they put something at the very end of the credits? I remember last year when I went to see Fantastic Four, God, that was awful. There were loads of people in the cinema waiting until the very end of the credits for something to happen, and nothing did happen. Everyone was just kind of very, very disappointed for that. So that's it, and Captain America Civil War, 4 out of 10. Very, very poor. I know the Russo brothers are doing the next 2 Avengers films, Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2, and no doubt those will last 2.5 bloody hours. Well, they won't need to. Of course, they could just put it all in one film, but no, because they can make twice as much money. That's why you had like The Hobbit Part 1, 2 and 3 and all those kind of things. So, there we go. So, Captain America Civil War,